现在订阅同盟会英语，不论找工作、升学或英检，表现更棒。快上
StudioClassroom.com。
现在请收听教学节目。
Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Join us today as we continue day 2 of a 3-step formula for success. Welcome, everybody, wherever you are, and we're glad that you can be with us today. We have in the studio Hazel. How are you today,
everybody?
Hazel?
I'm doing good, and I'm here on time, just like you requested.
Thanks for coming on time. And who else?
Hey, this is Pauline. Always happy to be in the studio, especially when Doris is at the helm.
Well, thank you, and I'm your teacher, Doris, and we're all trying to be, whether we call it successful, we want to do our best and feel like what we're doing is worthwhile. And if we're not successful, we feel like, oh, what's the point, you know? So success is not just a pride thing. It just means that we're helping out in the world somehow, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think we all want to do our best at the things that we are working at. We want to be successful. It's not a bad thing to want that.
Hazel's very successful because she can do so many things, but she still has to be on time, right?
That's right. We learned even the most
even
successful
though she's
people.
very successful, see? So that's the way with all of us, right? And especially if you're on the radio or TV, you better be on time, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Definitely if you're on the radio or TV. But really, like we said yesterday, even the most successful people should give others the respect to be on time.
So what pages are we looking at today?
We're on page 11 today.
Yeah, we just did page 10. And then we're talking about an actor. Now, when we think of movie actors and actresses, sometimes they become so famous that they think they don't have to be on time. And, don't you know who I am? But you have to watch that. And whatever you do, you realize that what you do shows respect for others.
Yeah, and we started talking about that with Tom Hanks. He got this really big award recently. He's considered one of the greatest actors of all time. So not only is he successful, but he has a lot of reason to be very proud to walk around acting as if he's the most important person in the room. And yet, from what we heard yesterday, it seems like he really doesn't do that he wants to still be responsible and care about other people's feelings and what's going on in their world and not cause a huge disruption by his pride. And the way that we really talked about that yesterday was by his commitment to show up early or on time for whatever he is scheduled to do.
You know, that's one thing that when you're younger, you haven't got a job yet. Either you're just out of high school or you're in a summer vacation. It's good to be an intern in a company because interns have a lot to learn before they become a regular staff member, don't they, Hazel?
That's right. And he learned a lot as an intern. It's important to heed the advice or listen to the advice of people who know more than you do. And some young people don't do that, but Tom Hanks really wanted to be an actor, it sounds like. And so when someone said you need to be on time and you need to know your text and other things, that the nuggets, the golden nuggets, he just really took those to heart and has followed through on that.
We've had a lot of interns through the years here working at Studio Classroom projects, TV and radio. And all of them, even 20 years later, they'll say that really helped them was the time when they were an intern because it formed certain habits that they needed to do. And so an intern is also a very important thing for companies to have them come and learn how to be part and do their part, don't you think?
Certainly, and it's great for the company to be able to have fresh people with ideas and talent working in that company for a short time. They can help each other. Although, of course, those interns have to be responsible. And it sounds like when Tom Hanks first started, he was not a responsible intern. But thankfully, like Hazel said, he responded to the feedback he got. Even when it was in the form of a boss screaming at him, he realized that he was not doing his part and turned it around. And apparently that was a good thing because he's had a lot of success in life.
Right. And so the person who's in charge can't do anything if the people don't cooperate. So we have to help each other, don't we?
We sure do. And sometimes when you're just starting out and you're young, you get the idea that you know so much already. So for a young person to take the advice of someone, that's good advice.
Right.
Although I will also say it's not just young people. If somebody screams at me, it's hard for me to get past the screaming and hear the good behind it because I'm not a really confrontation person. So if somebody's getting really angry, my response usually is just kind of like push it all aside and just not think about it. But for him to have the maturity to say, well, maybe he didn't need to scream at us, but he was right about some things. I was wrong about some things. I need to take that. I think even as an older person, that's a good reminder for me too.
Right. Like we learned yesterday, he said that being on time is the key to everything it does for you and the people you work with. So remember, that is important to be on time, right?
That's right. But it's not the only important thing, and we'll learn some other very important things today,
There's
right?
two more, right? Mm-hmm. And the first one is going to be about knowing your text. And so let's read that first little section first about know the text.
Know the text. Knowing your text, it's not just your lines, it's the whole thing, Hanks continued. You might not be right in the opinion you bring to it, but you've got to come at it with some direction. In a word, Hanks is speaking here about preparation. Generally speaking, the more prepared you are, the more successful you'll be. Think about it. Professional athletes, creatives, even analysts and number crunchers, often, it's not the smartest or most talented person in the room who's the most successful. It's the one who comes most prepared.
Now, knowing the text is not just your lines, but you have to know what the other people are going to say, what they're going to do. And, sometimes you think, oh, well, I don't need to know that. But what does it say here?
He says you've got to come at it with some direction. So I would think in the terms of being an actor that, just if he only knows his own lines, he may not understand the story that he's a part of. He doesn't really understand what this is. You need some direction. So he needs the whole text to have prepared and looked at that and understand which direction he's going with his part. Now it says he might still be wrong or not right in his opinion about the direction he's going. Maybe he thinks the story has a certain meaning or his character is going to have a certain feel, and then he finds out the director has a different idea. That's okay. At least it shows that he'd thought through it. He'd given it some thought for what direction he thought it was going to go. But then if they need to change that, that's okay. But it's not because he just didn't care and didn't read the text to begin with.
Yeah, well, the next paragraph says in a word, and actually it takes more than one word. But what they mean is, we sometimes say in a nutshell, but just to sum it all up, what does it mean?
To sum things up, to be concise. So he's speaking about preparation. You should know your job and what's expected of you and have thought it out before you go to work, even if it's at the office or acting or whatever your job is.
Yeah, I mean, this one is a little less straightforward when you first read this step, right? When we read the first step, show up on time, we all pretty much understand, oh yeah, that applies to everything. We get what they're talking about. But the second, little nugget of know the text can sound a little strange. Like a lot of jobs, there's no text you have to know. You're not doing a script. But that's why they say, well, really what we're saying here is that whatever your job is, you need to be prepared. You need to be ready to do your job and do the work before you arrive in the meeting or wherever to do your part.
Find out more about it and don't just come in and say, what's this all about? I don't know. Mm-hmm. No, be prepared. Being prepared is very important, and being prepared to accept things that are different, And think about it, here, like professional athletes. And they have to be prepared. Of course, they have to do their exercises and get in shape, don't they?
Yeah, they don't just show up for one game, right? They don't just say, oh, on Friday at this time is the basketball game, show up, and they just get to sleep and eat chips and go to the movies for the whole week. No, I mean, they're preparing. I
can understand that one. But what about the creative analysts and number crunchers? What do they have to be prepared for? That's kind of difficult. Hazel, will you explain that one?
Well, a number cruncher is someone, perhaps an accountant or someone who's in finance. They're an analyst, okay? And so there's creative people, but people that crunch numbers we usually think of as precise, and maybe their job is not a creative job. They just have to get things correct.
So it may not be the person who's the most talented in the room, but it's the one who's prepared the most. So I've prepared this, and I know this, and I know this, and that helps everybody, doesn't it?
I kind of had mentioned this at the end of the program yesterday with the showing up on time, that I've worked with some people who are very talented, very smart, who were very good at their job when they were there doing it, but who weren't reliable, right? Who maybe didn't show up on time, or they weren't prepared. And as a result, I would always pick the other coworkers. I would always prefer to work with the other coworkers who may not be as talented and as smart, but who I knew were going to come in prepared. They were going to be there on time, and we were going to not have all these problems that came up just because there wasn't that work ethic. It is really important, and probably more important than talent or your intelligence is that work ethic and being willing to be prepared and on time.
And being prepared not only means to know what you think, but be ready to accept other people's ideas and be prepared. Well, this is what I think, but we'll see. And so when you're prepared, you sort of are open to other people's ideas, aren't you?
And I think that's important, to be flexible.
Yeah.
In the first paragraph, he says, you have some direction of where you're going. So that's your opinion. But if you're told that that's not the direction, you're willing to change and accept that.
Be prepared to check the numbers and their crunch. They say so many people like this. Number crunchers, that's kind of a funny expression. We don't usually say that one, but we know what it means.
But sometimes we do ask someone to crunch the numbers. It's like if you have a big project you're working on, you say, oh, why don't you crunch the numbers? Why don't you see how much this is going to cost?
Or how many people listen in, or how many people do this.
Right.
You have to get the statistics more, don't you think?
Exactly.
Number crunchers need statistics. They need to know what's going on. That's true. So it says here that, it's not the smartest or the most talented people, but those who come prepared. So be ready to do, if somebody asks you something, you say, oh, yeah, I looked that up, I know. Be prepared if you can.
I think that's the motto of the Boy Scouts, or used to be prepared.
I think
be
you're
ready.
Right.
Well, and then a lot of us do this. We have a head full of ideas, but how are we going to use it? So the next whole section talks about having a head full of ideas already. Let's read the rest of it.
Have a head full of ideas. Speaking to this final point, Hanks said the following: bring anything, try anything. They might not use it. If it stinks, they won't use it. The best companies are successful because their employees are constantly seeking to try new things, to grow and improve. Routines and processes are helpful, but growth doesn't happen when you always do things the exact same way. Growth is a result of being willing to take risks, to break out of your comfort zone, and to embrace failure when it happens. Because out of failure comes learning, and out of learning comes growth. Without new ideas, you'll never even get the chance to fail. That's why taking time for concentrated thought, filling your head with ideas, is a major key to success. If you carve out time to think, you'll have a major advantage. Don't leave it to chance. Put it on the calendar. Think time. Then treat it like an unmissable appointment. So, are you ready to do more? To go higher? The formula is simple. Show up on time. Know the text. Have a head full of ideas. And trust me, if it worked for Tom Hanks, it'll work for you.
So having a head full of ideas, you see here like a electric light or something turned on. In other words, I can think of something to say. And so he says, bring anything, try anything. It's kind of like you want to talk about it. And if it stinks, now we don't use that word too much. If it stinks means 很臭嘛. What do they mean there, Hazel?
Well, sometimes somebody will have a joke and you'll say, oh, that stinks. It's not funny. I don't like it. So the word stinks just means something that's not very good. You don't like it.
If it's not a good idea is all it means. Yeah.
Exactly. And some
that was
people
a
don't even
stupid
like
idea.
Yeah. So,
But
okay.
I think his point, too, is that you shouldn't be afraid of stupid ideas or bad ideas.
You don't have to do them, but
you don't have to do
them.
them, but showing that you're willing to think about things and be creative and bring ideas to the table is the really important thing. And you don't have to worry as the individual about whether or not your idea, how good or bad your idea is, because that's what the boss gets to do. They get to decide which ones to use. You're just showing that you're invested, that you care about the thing that you're doing, and you have ideas and you're thinking about
and
it.
sometimes crazy ideas work out. You never know.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. But it says the best companies are successful because their employees are constantly trying new things to grow and improve. In other words, we used to do it that way 10 years ago. Let's keep doing it. But that doesn't work. You have to try new ways. And some people say, what are you going to do next year? And I said, well, it depends on technology. It depends. I mean, some things haven't even been invented yet, so I'll wait till they happen. So you have to be ready to do that, to try new things, to try to grow and try to improve. And it's easier just to do the old things that seems successful. Why don't we do the old things?
Right. But I think we all know in this age of computers and internet and technology that that doesn't work for very long. In most industries, you're going to have to be adaptive. You're going to have to understand what the new thing is and respond to that if you want to have a successful business for very long.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that we don't have routines that we always do and processes, but you can't keep always doing everything the same way. And so this is why we have the QR code. We didn't used to have that. This is why we have our mstudioclassroom.com, and you can see us on the web. And this is why we do. But what are we going to do next year? It depends on the growth of the industry, and then we can go into it.
Right. And, I think some people bring ideas to the table, as we say, that maybe the idea stinks, but it might give someone else a different idea. Your idea might help someone to think outside the box. So, so all the ideas combined, and then you can find the best ones that work for the company.
And if you don't get people, we call that brainstorming sometimes. And sometimes people are afraid to say something. They might laugh at you or say, oh, that idea is no good. They won't say it stinks, but they'll say it's no good, okay? And but you still have to try to think it different. Well, why don't we try this? And they can consider it. Maybe they won't try it now. They might try it later, know. So growth is a result of being willing to take risks. And some of the big companies in the world, that's the way they've grown, is by taking a risk. Amazon certainly took some, and Google and some of those. Sometimes they'll spend a lot of money on somebody's idea and it doesn't work, but it might work next year.
Or one of those ideas does. I think they have a willingness to have some ideas fail, knowing that if they only do the ideas that they're sure are going to succeed, they might not do any, or they'll only do one, and they won't really grow that much. There has to be a willingness to allow some failure. And if that's what it says here too, they take risks, they break out of their comfort zone, and embrace failure when it happens. I think the word embrace is an interesting one here. Usually the word embrace means like to hug, right?
It's not easy to embrace failure. It means to accept it, but to break out of your comfort zone. We're more comfortable when, we've always done it this way. Let's keep doing it that way. But that's not necessarily going to work.
Yeah, instead they say you got to take risks. And when the failure happens, see that somehow as a positive, because you don't embrace things that you don't like, is my point. When you hug something, it's somebody you love, you like, right? And so I don't usually think that I like failure in a way that would make me want to embrace it. But they're really, Tom Hanks here and the author is saying, you have to see that as a positive to some degree. If you're not having any failure, that probably means you're not going out of your comfort zone or taking any risks.
What does it say what comes out of the failure here because of that?
Learning. And out of learning comes growth. So every time we fail, we learn something new. We learn what doesn't work or what didn't work. And so you can
if it doesn't
grow
work,
because
you say,
of that.
I'll try it again, but I can change something in it, but part of it's good.
Exactly.
You don't throw the whole thing out.
Right. Sometimes you do, if it really stinks. By the way, that word, it's not good to tell your friends, oh, no, that stinks.
No, don't tell them
Be
that.
very careful how you say it.
It's not terribly polite to say that.
You might say, like, what did you think of that movie? Oh, I think it stunk. Or, it's usually more not somebody personal that you would use that word. You might agree that you thought something wasn't good. But.
Right. But with new ideas, if you don't have new ideas, you'll never have the chance to fail. So that's why you take time to think about new ideas. And why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And that's a major key to success, is trying new things and new ideas. Isn't it?
Right. We do a lot of skits, and and I write them out, and I try to get them just the way I think they should be, and then the actors do something completely different, and sometimes it stinks, but sometimes it really works and improves what we do. So to think and to be creative and get new ideas is a great idea.
I think this is a nice piece of advice both for an individual employee and for an employer or a boss. If you lead a team or if you're a boss, to say, you want to encourage your employees to have heads full of ideas, to feel safe to bring all of their wild and crazy ideas. You don't have to accept every single one and go with it, but you want people to feel safe to bring their creativity to their job and have ideas.
Well, it says that you should have some time to even think. Don't just say, well, I'll see whether any ideas pop into my head. Say, let's sit here and think about it. That's what you call brainstorming. We're going to have some time to think about this before we do it. And just because somebody mentions it doesn't mean you will do it. That's another thing. I gave them the idea and they didn't do it. Never mind. Take some more think time. And this is something that you really need to take time to consider.
And again, I think this is a great piece of advice both for an individual employee and for a manager or a boss, to say, you should be putting on a calendar times for your team to brainstorm, like Doris said, to think about ideas and talk them through. But as an employee, you don't need to wait for your boss to do that either. You can take the initiative to write on your own calendar, I am going to sit and just think about some creative ideas for how I can do my job better, how I can, ideas that I can bring to the company. I want to be a part of this. I'm not going to leave it to chance to just hope some inspiration pops to my mind. I'm going to sit down and make some time to really think about this.
So are you ready to do more? To go higher, are you?
Go higher. Let's go higher.
The formula is very simple. What's the formula?
Show up on time.
Know the text.
And have a head full of ideas. Wow. So trust me, if it worked for Tom Hanks, it'll work for you. And I would like to say this about our studio classroom teachers. They're always coming up with new ideas, and that's good. We should encourage it. And you should encourage it wherever you are. And that's his formula for success. It's very simple, but it's really makes a difference in a company, doesn't it?
It does.
If they're more progressive and they do new things. Yeah.
I agree. And I do like this, we were saying before, it's not this super deep change your life kind of formula. They're not giving you the formula for a successful relationship, or although maybe you can make some applications to it. But the nice thing is it is simple. It's easy to remember, and it will get you really far if you really lean into these ideas, especially in your professional life, I think.
I think so, too.
Yeah, some companies do have this time, like at Amazon, which is really a big company, and their CEO, Jeff Bezos, he says, okay, we're going to have a meeting. Let's have a half an hour of silence to get ready. Well, you can't always do that. But the whole idea is, if you're going to go to a meeting, take a little time to think about, what are they going to talk about at the meeting? Don't wait till you get there and say, what are we going to talk about?
That's
know
right.
ahead of time, right?
Yeah, so Jeff Bezos is one who certainly believes in the importance of these ideas. I'm sure it's important to him that everybody shows up on time for that meeting, and then he thinks it's so important that everybody's prepared and has some ideas that he doesn't leave it to chance. He doesn't leave it to each of the employees to make sure they do it before they come to the meeting. He says, no, I'm not going to even allow for the possibility that they haven't done that. I'm going to give a half an hour where we just sit in silence and everybody's going to have this time
I don't know if that would work for every company.
Well, it sounds like they're given a well-prepared memo, so maybe that's what they read when they're there.
Yeah,
for
that's
the
what they
first
do. Yeah,
half
he does
hour.
have something for them. It's not just to sit and stare at a screen
No,
or
I'm
stare
sure
at the
they
wall.
give them ideas to think about.
But I do think it's interesting that he's really like crafted that into his organization, is that this idea of knowing the text, having ideas before you really jump into things is very set into their company. And that's another, I would say, pretty successful company. So somewhere else where that seems to be working pretty well.
So I think when people heard Tom Hanks give this acceptance speech, they felt like it was golden nuggets. He told us important things that for success. And, of course, all of us can follow that, too.
That's
can't
right.
we?
It's
And what
better
are the
than,
three ones?
One more time, or we're going to repeat them one more time. All right, Hazel, what's the first one?
Be on time.
Know the text.
And the next one is have a head full of ideas. That's it. And
Sounds like we got it.
they got it. And we're thankful that you were with us today. And don't worry if you have a failure. Learn from it. You can learn from that and accept it and go on and have growth. So keep working on it. Maybe everything you do is not perfect, but you can learn from your failures. So thanks for being with us, and we hope this will be an inspiration, and it's an interesting article, don't you think?
I think it is.
I really enjoyed it. A good way to start off July.
And so thanks for joining us, Hazel and Pauline, and all of you out there. We're glad that you're members of our Studio Classroom Advanced, and remember, we have to be learning all our life, right?
Okay, yes. Lifelong learners.
See you next time for a new lesson. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.